So, I'm back again with another Godox video. Hopefully this is the last one that I make for a little while at least. I've just been getting a lot of questions because that video did get quite a lot of views, and there's been some controversy between a few topics, and I want to make sure that everything's squared away and that everyone understands pretty much everything that there is to know about this light. I want to make sure that I debunk all of the common misconceptions about this light as well. So just making this video about the color and the accuracy of this light versus the Aperture 120D. And so I've done some tests and I wanted to share them with you and make sure that you guys knew what you're getting into when you buy this light. My tests have been interesting. I've learned some things, and I think that the people that commented negative things towards this light are going to also learn some things. So hopefully we can all just learn and save 600 bucks. One thing I want to mention before we get into the color of this light, one of the people in the comment section asked about the durability of this light. They said, I'm on set all day long. I want to know, is this light capable of being on for 10 plus hours at maximum output? And yes, I left this light on for 10 hours and it got all the way up to 52 degrees Celsius, and then it stayed there, flatlined right there. It stayed like that all the way up until I turned it off. So it got pretty warm, but like I said, the exterior doesn't get warm really. So it got up to 52 and it stayed on for 10 hours straight at 100% output, and it didn't turn off. There's no issues. It was completely fine. So I just want to let you guys know about that if you were wondering. So let's go over to the computer and I'll show you some of the tests that I've done in DaVinci Resolve. Okay, so here we are in DaVinci Resolve, and before I show you any of the corrections that I've made or what I've done to this footage, I just want to show you a side-by-side comparison of the two clips, one from the SL-60W and one from the 120D. Both of these have been corrected to match each other, so they're going to look fairly similar, but I wanted to show you what you can get with these two lights. So here's light A, and here's light B. And here's a side-by-side comparison of the two. So if you have a good eye, you can probably tell that there is a slight difference between the two shots, but they are corrected to match each other. I only took like 5 minutes to correct them, but I wanted to show you that you can correct these lights to pretty much exactly match. If you don't have any experience in coloring, or you just don't have a great eye because you haven't worked in video for long enough, you probably can't tell a difference at all. But the one thing that I really want to stress is that I guarantee that the majority of you guys, maybe 99% of you, unless you're really a professional colorist and you have a super good eye, you probably can't tell which one is which. And there's a reason for that. These clips are corrected to match each other, so they're supposed to look identical. And although I only took 5 minutes to correct them, the SL-60W had a really great starting point, so I really only had to do 2 slight tweaks to make it match the 120D a little bit better. So now I want to show you the difference between the two without any corrections done. Basically, all I did was add a LUT from Vlog to Rec 709 so that it didn't look so flat and washed out. I shot it in Vlog, so I just added a LUT to make it to Rec 709. And then I added some saturation and some vibrance just to pull the colors out a little bit so we can actually tell the difference between the two. So here's light A, and here's light B. And here's a side-by-side comparison of the two. Now, 95% of you probably still can't tell which one is which. Hopefully you can tell that there's a difference between the two, but the people that really have a decent eye can probably tell which one is the SL-60W and which one is the 120D. And it's probably more obvious than not when it comes to the skin tones and the color of the shirt. So light A was the SL-60W and light B was the 120D. So now let's jump into Resolve and I'll show you kind of the differences between the two, and we can show you how I corrected them. So here's the SL-60W blown up in DaVinci Resolve, and here's the 120D. So as we can tell, it's actually not a terrible starting point. The 60W actually has way better color output than I would have expected when doing these tests, because the last video I made about this, I really didn't test them thoroughly. I just wanted to do a basic test to see roughly how close each one was to the other. But in these tests, I did everything I could to control the light and make sure that it was 100% accurate. So honestly, it's a fine starting point, in my opinion. We can tell that the 120D is a little bit more warm and has a little bit more red in the skin tones, and The SL-60W does seem to have a tiny little bit of green in the skin, and I don't really like that, but that's easily correctable. And then also the shirt. The shirt looks a little bit more warm and a little bit less cyan than the 120D. We can see that the 120D looks a little bit more muted. It's not so warm, and it is a little bit more like a cyan rather than kind of a greenish blue. And I did notice that the 120D is a little bit more true to life on the shirt. That is what my shirt looks like in real life, as opposed to the SL-60W, which is a little bit too warm and doesn't have enough cyan in it. So let's jump back over to this, and I'll show you what I did. So on the first node, and this is DaVinci Resolve, so we work in a nodal system. Nodes are kind of like layers in After Effects or Premiere. So these two nodes are just for the LUT and the saturation and vibrance. But on the first node of correction, what I did was I qualified the skin. Qualifying is basically just taking this little eyedropper, clicking on the skin, and then fine-tuning it so that we're only manipulating the skin tones. It disqualifies everything else, and it only qualifies the skin tones. So now we're only changing the color, the luminance, the saturation. Any changes that we make will only be happening to the skin tones. I added this first node, and I qualified the skin, and I made some changes. I added some red and a little bit of warmth, and we can see what that's doing right here. This is it with the correction, and this is it without the correction. So we can see that we're adding just a tiny little bit of warmth and a tiny little bit of red into those skin tones. And I think I might be able to take a little bit of green out of that too, but I'm not going to do that right now. So this is without the correction, and this is with the correction. And some of you might not even be able to tell what's going on here because it's so subtle. The difference between the correction and the non-correction is so subtle, but that's kind of how coloring works. You're making subtle changes to each individual part. And then the next thing I did was I qualified the shirt because that was the next thing that was off, and turned that on. I added some cyan, and I took away some saturation, just a little bit of saturation and some of the warmth, because I did notice the 120D was a little bit more muted. So this is with the correction, and this is without the correction. Without. So we can see that without it, it is a little bit more warm, and with it, that warmth has been taken away, and some more kind of bluish green has been added to it. So this is the SL-60W completely corrected. It took me 5 minutes to do this, and it's not going to match perfectly with the 120D, but it does match really, really well. If I took maybe 5 more minutes, I could get it to match perfectly. Yeah, I only took 5 minutes to do this. So here's the 60W, and here's the 120D. 60W, 120D. And as I'm looking at this back and forth, I'm noticing there is a tiny little bit too much red in the skin on the 60W that I added, and maybe a little bit, tiny little bit too much green. Like I said, if I took 5 more minutes, I could make these two match perfectly. But if we go back and forth between the two, they look fairly similar. I see that there's kind of just a little bit too much warmth in the skin tones for me on the 120D. I personally prefer what the 60W is doing. I still want to correct it a little bit more, and I think that the left half of my face is a little bit too bright, but that's easily corrected in about 5 minutes. So there you go. The shirt's still a little tiny bit different, but this is really, really close. And I'm liking what we're getting out of the 60W. I'm also liking what we're getting out of the 120D. So my general consensus is, if you want amazing, perfect light quality right out of camera, you're gonna go with the 120D because it's reliable, it's popular, it's kind of the industry standard at the price point that it's at. And Aperture does a great job with their lights. But if you're like me and you don't have a ton of money and you want good quality lighting and only have to do minor corrections, if anything, get the 60W. It's a great alternative, and it does have fine color rendition. People that are saying that it has the worst color rendition they've ever seen and they're over exaggerating. I've seen LED lights that have 10 times worse color rendition than I've seen out of this light, and that takes a lot longer to manipulate and change and fix and correct than what I just did with this light. So I'm happy that this light is only $134 and that it does what it does for that price. So yeah, if you're still on the fence about this light because maybe the color isn't as good as you think it might be, don't worry about that. You can easily correct the skin tones and any other colors, and you could use a color chart if you wanted to. I found in my tests that the color chart didn't work that well. This light is definitely worth the money. It's probably worth more than what you're actually paying for. So yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know that this light does pretty well as far as color goes. So that's it, guys. I hope this was helpful. I hope this was informative. I hope this furthers you in your quest towards buying a video light, whether it's going to be the 120D or the SLW, or maybe some other video light that you found. I hope this has been informative and helpful for you guys. That's kind of my goal with these videos, and I just want to help you guys get the best experience and best equipment that you possibly can. So if you liked the video, leave a thumbs up. If you didn't, leave a comment down below and tell me why. I'd love to hear your feedback. Just love to hear your feedback, especially if it's hate comments. I'd love to hear your feedback. I'm always open to criticism, and I love learning, so please tell me what you think down below. Subscribe if you haven't already and you want to see more content like this, but that's going to do it for this one. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out. Yeah.